Well, good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday morning to you. Hope you've had an absolutely fantastic week so far. It's been exciting for me. Many things, orders from Germany, contact with people from New Zealand, Australia. I'm telling you, covenant eschatology continues to grow, continues to spread. And one of the things that's absolutely so thrilling to me is when I hear from people, whether by phone calls or emails or private messages on Facebook and what have you, is how people share with me the joy, the assurance, and the reassurance of their faith that they're experiencing by coming to a knowledge of covenant eschatology. You know, folks, it's troubling to me how people can get so diverted and troubled by so many side issues that come up in life. But you know what? That's the way movements are. I've just got to take a moment to express this. People talk about, there's some weird views within covenant eschatology, and look at this person, look at that person. Oh my goodness, there's no unity within the movement. Kenneth Gentry likes to make that argument, by the way, as well as Joel McDermott and some others. But if you go back into history, you do not find a movement that did not have its, how should I express this? Its problems. It's, excuse me, it's weirdos and wackos, all right? Just simply has never been a movement. Do you realize that when John Calvin began the movement that we call the Reform movement today, that some of his followers decided that anybody that disagreed with John Calvin's teaching was a heretic and needed to be put to death? There was an uprising. I mean, this was virtually a war. Over 200,000 people died in the violence instigated by followers of Calvin. Oh my goodness gracious. Well, therefore, we ought to just completely, totally discount Calvinism. Right? That's the logic. Because there are some people who go off on tangents on this and that and the other within covenant eschatology. We ought to therefore just completely disband and just ignore the biblical evidence for the truth that Christ came in AD 70. No, that's not good logic at all. Okay, got to get off the soapbox here. But it's just, yes, it's deeply troubling when you have people who divert from the message. And they come up with all sorts of weird and aberrant ideas. And I can tell you this, in my years within the movement of preterism, I have seen a lot of people come and a lot of people go. And it's been troubling. It's been sad. But you know what? That never makes me take my eyes off of Jesus Christ and His Word, His truth. Don't let it do that to you either. All right. Well, we're looking at Romans 5 to 8 because Paul is dealing here with Adam's sin and death, and he's dealing with Christ's righteousness and life, just as he does in 1 Corinthians chapter 15. And we're focusing in on the motif that sin was the sting of death. Now, let me reiterate that little axiom one more time. You're going to hear it a lot. If you deal with sin, you've dealt with death. That's just all there is to it. Sin brings death. What does forgiveness bring? Life. All right. Now, I want you to notice here, and I said we'd get into chapter 6, but I'm going to try to make this a very brief video here as we close out this week, because I just simply want to focus on Romans chapter 5, verse 20 and 21. This is so absolutely critical. Remember that Paul says in verse 14, death reigned from Adam to Moses. Now, first of all, that tells us the law of Moses was not the law of Adam. And it was not the law from Adam to Moses. Isn't that pretty clear? Okay? So, while the law of Moses did not exist from Adam to Moses, nonetheless, sin and death reigned from Adam to Moses. There's some mistaken views out there that says there's no such thing as sin without the law of Moses. That is patently not true in Paul's theology when he says sin and death reigned from Adam to Moses. If sin and death did not exist without the law of Moses, then Paul was absurdly wrong to state that sin and death reigned from Adam to Moses. Okay, then what role did the law of Moses play? Well, you just got to understand that Paul says, moreover law, now the definite article is not there. All right? It is not the law entered, but that's the subject. That's the context. Because after all, sin and death reigned from Adam to Moses. So now, talking about Moses and law, he says, law entered that the offense might abound. And that means that death might abound. Let me ask you a question. I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh here. But to me, this is so simple. Did mankind need the law of Moses to know how severe the problem of biological death is? Hello? Hello? The law of Moses did not have to enter to make man know that he was going to die biologically, right? I mean, after all, every human being who had ever lived until from Adam to Moses, yeah, I know about Enoch. But every human being that had lived from Adam to Moses, guess what? They died. They died biologically. So are we supposed to believe that Paul's saying, well, you know, the law of Moses entered in order for people to know that they're going to die biologically? No. Makes no sense whatsoever. Law, specifically the law of Moses, entered to magnify the problem of sin, and the sin that passed upon men when they sinned. Romans 5:12. As in Adam all men, wherefore as by one man sin entered the world, and death through sin, therefore death passed on all men, because all men sin. Let me reiterate this simple yet profound point. Law of Moses did not enter to make man know that they were going to die biologically. The law of Moses entered to magnify, to exacerbate, to compound, to do as Paul would say in Romans chapter 7, to reveal the exceedingly sinfulness of sin and the death that would result through that sin. So let's not be dissuaded and let's not be persuaded by those who try to tell us there was really no sin and no death from Adam to Moses. Clearly it did. But the issue is not biological death. The issue is the death that was magnified, compounded, exacerbated by entrance of the law of Moses. Not created, magnified. Okay, we didn't get to chapter 6. We'll do that as we continue next week. But do not forget, in the meantime, order the little book, The Last Enemy and the Triumph of Christ by Daniel Rogers. So look, it's only $5.95 plus shipping, okay? And when you order, I will include a copy of the book, free of charge, Preterism, A Brief Introduction by Brian Martin. Give you two wonderful, wonderful resources that will be extremely helpful to you. Well, look, thank you so very much for joining me for this morning's Morning Musings. Don't forget, in the morning, we will have our video number 9 in response and refutation of Kenneth Gentry's book, Have We Missed the Second Coming? You don't want to miss it. We'll see you on the flip side.